We are well into the winter months now, and you can feel it, can't you? That urge to get away. Maybe some beach time to warm up those bones of yours, maybe a hockey, sports kind of road trip. Well, when you pack your bags, make sure you don't forget Alberta Blue Cross. There's only one thing better than sharing memories, and that's making new ones. Alberta Blue Cross travel insurance protects your memories and more, wherever travel takes you. Visit ab.bluecross.ca/travel for more information. Alberta Blue Cross, celebrating life's memorable moments inspired by hockey.
Hey guys, it's Pinder chatting about Charm Diamond Centers. Did you know that Charm's been Canadian owned and operated since 1972? And there's over 85 locations coast to coast to coast with Charm and their sister brands. Get this now. You want to get something custom made? How about custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks? That's unreal. That is the Charm Masterpiece program, and they've got unbeatable pricing policies as well. Whether it's mined diamonds or Canadian lab-grown diamonds, check them out. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. That's charmdiamondcenters.com.
All right, gang, listen up. It's time to learn the pro pose. Coach?
Bend and snap.
Beautiful form. Nice arm extension. Facial expression. I could use some work. All right, let's see it. The pro pose. What's that guy doing?
I think that's the bend and snap.
That's a whole different deal. Charm, home of the pro pose. Oh!
Every all-star needs a sidekick to support them. Just like every Wendy's meal needs a 6-piece of nuggets. Right now, Wendy's is teaming up with Daily Face-Off Fantasy to bring you weekly prizes like free nuggets, burgers, and more. So if you think you're an expert in all things hockey, prove it. And if you aren't already, start adding a 6-piece to your Wendy's order for just $3.49. It's the dynamic duo even you never saw coming. Sign up for Daily Face-Off today, sponsored by Wendy's and the Wendy's app. And now, more of Afterburner.
Oh, God, call an ambulance. But not for me. After 3 treacherous outings, Calgary pulls out a massive win over the Vegas Golden Knights. They dish Hanifin some sweet, sweet revenge and give fans a lot of reasons to keep watching as we hit the home stretch of the regular season. Yegor Sharangovich is a point away from 50. Dryden Hunt is undeniable. And Dustin Wolf earns his 3rd win, 2nd this season, in his best showing at the NHL level. Welcome to Afterburner. Welcome to Mike Gould making his debut on the program. Is Mike short for microphone?
Well, I've certainly got a big one in front of me. No, it's short for Michael, but I appreciate you having me on today, Cami. I've long watched the show, and I picked a very good game to come in for the first time.
Hell of a game to come in. What'd you make of that one?
It was one hell of a game. I mean, what can you say? It was, I bought an e-reader today, and the first 2 periods I was sort of debating, starting to get some reading done instead of watching the game because it was a little bit dry at times. That 3rd period really picked it up. They really were all over them. I was debating whether I was more impressed by the Flames or less impressed by Vegas. To be honest with you, I thought Vegas was kind of, but the Flames, for their credit, did very well. I thought they stayed involved. And, for a team that hasn't showed very much energy in the last 3 games, they brought a lot of it tonight.
We know Vegas wanted to make a lot of changes because they weren't very happy with the way the team was playing at 1.37-0 in their past 10 games, but their efforts were certainly there. But Calgary did a really good job of neutralizing or nullifying a lot of their efforts while playing their rush game to the best it could be. Yeah. Calgary gets a hell of a lot of offense off the rush, and we saw some beautiful opportunities and goals that way tonight.
Yeah, I really liked the Flames offensively from the start of this one. The shots were 7-1 at one point in the first period. The number of rushes we were talking about during the game, how good the Backlund line was, especially at just generating stuff off the rush. I mean, that 1-2-on-1 that he had with Kevin Rooney, where he spun around and feathered the puck back in front, and Rooney was close. I only saw, I would say, 1 rush like that from Vegas tonight when I think it was Eichel and Stevenson really burst through the Anderson-Weegar pairing and forced Wolf to make, on any other night, what might have been his best save. But tonight he had a couple that I would say were better. But yeah, the Flames had a number of those. And again, it was the Backlund line that I thought was really generating a lot of that. But we saw, especially as the game was going on, I mean, you talked about Dryden Hunt. and what a story he is and how many teams he's been with, and him staying with the Wranglers after they trade for him last season for Radim Zahorna. And now he comes up and, earlier on in the season, you were sort of wondering what was necessarily the play here, what the story is. He's been really good. And I thought he was excellent tonight. I mean, a couple of assists, setting up the Coronado goal with a terrific pass, a great shot from Coronado to put that one in for only his second goal. I could have sworn he had more. But yeah, a lot of good stuff off the rush for this Flames team tonight.
One thing you mentioned there that I want to get right to, we'll get right into the thick of it. That was not Dustin Wolf's best save.
No.
I think his best save might just pop up here in our Betway highlight of the night. Get the Betway app on your phone and bet the responsible way.
Necessarily want to have bearing down on you. That's a terrific save. And then the wherewithal for Nazem Kadri, Blake Coleman going in front. I mean, we talk about Yegor Sharangovich, and we will talk about him, but Blake Coleman, 28 goals on the year now. I mean, I don't know if anybody would have really seen that coming at the start of the season, just how strong he has been. But again, it doesn't happen without that save by Dustin Wolf.
30? How? What?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I remember when they signed Blake Coleman to that contract, and the comparisons were right away being made with Zach Hyman. And I, at the time, thought that Coleman was the better bet. Now, Hyman has been an amazing fit with Connor McDavid, but Blake Coleman has been outstanding. And I think as advertised with the Calgary Flames, to the point where, if it was anybody other than Hyman you were comparing him to, you'd probably say, yeah, they came out on the right side of that. And I mean, the season that he's had on a team where he hasn't had a whole lot of support, obviously he's playing on the backline line, but still, to get as many goals as he's had and to be a strong two-way player as he is, that's something worthy of praise.
It's Calgary's most consistent line. It's one of their most fun lines to watch. But beyond his production, he has been a massive part in setting an example for the young players who are starting to get their opportunities with the Flames. And even when things aren't going the greatest, even when things look like they are not destined for playoffs, he still shows them how to play the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at what Connor Zary has done in the games where he's been healthy, and he has a lot of the same poise in his game as we see with guys in the backline line. And he hasn't even been playing there. I mean, you look at Andrew Mangiapane being ushered into the NHL. I was saying during the game what good it would do for a player like Jacob Pelche to get some opportunity with those two players, because I think it would just complement him so well. And, you look at this Flames team being one that has traded so many veterans, and they have 5 of them since last free agency, but you can't trade everybody. And Blake Coleman, Michael Backlund, for any team in the league, whether you're the best team or the, whatever the Flames end up being 22nd or 23rd ranked team in the league, that's a duo that you can have all day long. No complaints.
And Nazem Kadri, no slouch himself. That is his 35th assist of the season. He has been huge for Calgary this year, almost even more deserving of All-Star recognition than when he actually went last year, but good for him. Yep, that Dustin Wolf save to the Blake Coleman goal. That is our highlight of the night presented by Betway. And right now you can get a free bet up to $200 if the first bet loses. You make a new account, you scan that QR code on the screen and redeem your bonus. You can place a bet. There's no minimum amount required. And if it doesn't hit, you will get a refund up to $200. And you can then use that money to bet on your favorite sports. And that offer available outside of Ontario with Betway. And of course, everyone is wondering how long this Jacob Markstrom malaise might last and how much more we might see of Dustin Wolf. Now, this was his first start since February 15th, where he had some stinkers. He also got hung out to dry with some truly atrocious turnovers by his teammates. But 28 to 29, like in terms of shots, a .966 save percentage. And there were some fantastic saves in there. Maybe the most significant first one was off that Jack Eichel one-timer. But then, as you mentioned earlier, and I think we have the video for this, he has a little bit of a whoopsie. A giveaway down low. It was a wide open.
The other way, that's probably a goal. But, Wolf, to his credit, gets back. Pavel Dorofeyev steals the puck away from him, and William Karlsson, not in his wheelhouse, has a bit of time for Wolf to get back. And that's just, that's fantastic stuff. That's the sort of thing that we've become accustomed to seeing from Dustin Wolf to an extent in the American League level. Maybe not him making those mistakes necessarily, but him just being willing to go all out for a save. And the funny thing is, watching Dustin Wolf of the last, 4 seasons now, that's crazy that it's been this long since he made his pro debut. But when it rains, it can pour. And I was at his first pro game where
After World Juniors, when they came down, that was a really
Yeah.
difficult. Those first 2 starts for him were really
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, and his first game with the Stockton Heat when they were playing in the COVID bubble here in the Saddledome was rough, and he had, I think he gave up 5 goals. It was, I think, against the Toronto Marlies, and he was pulled, and they were all on deflections. I mean, Rob Hamilton, an Okotoks Oiler alumnus, had 2 of them deflect off of his own left knee, and Wolf after that was stellar in his 2 games after that. And it's been sort of the same story where Wolf in the American League is dominant, generally speaking. He'll allow 1-2 goals over a month-long stretch per game. And then he'll have a game where he gives up 6. And it just happens that way. But he's very resilient. And that's the one thing where he hasn't maybe had the opportunity to bounce back in the NHL so much because he hasn't been playing as much. But this game was a statement. And this was a game where, any concerns you might have about Wolf, being too small to play in the NHL. I mean, his last start, I thought he looked really small in that. And
everything just looked off. It was one of those rare instances where he just truly didn't look settled. I even go back to the first San Jose goal where it honestly looked like something was wrong with his edges. He wasn't able to get the proper push off of his right skate, and he wasn't quite able to track pucks. And that was not an issue tonight. Another great save he made was Stevenson put on that big burst of speed while Eichel kind of walked through the Calgary defenders and feathered the pass. And Wolf read that like a book. He was able to come out quite a bit to take away Stevenson's angles and make a difficult save look pretty damn easy.
Yeah, that was a big whoa moment. I think Vegas was on the power play, and we had a couple moments in the game where we both, I think, were watching the TV and saying, "Whoa, where did that come from?" And that was one of them where it was just like, yeah, Wolf gets across. He's always been a very strong lateral goaltender. It's always been his bread and butter. He's great at getting across his crease. And that was an instance where that could have been a Calgary or a Wranglers versus Henderson Silver Knights game. And that's a save that would have been right out of his playbook. And so to see him adapt that to the NHL level against 2 of Vegas's top centers in Chandler Stevenson and Jack Eichel bearing down on you. I mean, we talk about Ivan Barbashev being dangerous to face on a breakaway. Those are 2 very dangerous players, and he played extremely well.
Of course, the other big thing people were watching tonight, Noah Hanifin's return. This is another instance where the Flames trade a guy and they have to see him pretty quickly. I believe Zadorov was the next game. They traded him and it was like, is he even going to bother going to Vancouver? Because they're just going to get here. But the difference there was Zadorov had an assist on the game-winning goal in his first meeting against the Flames. Hanifin ended up -1. And I wouldn't say he was the most remarkable in this game. This was not Noah Hanifin at his best. Granted, he's getting used to a new team. He is playing with Alex Pietrangelo, which is, damn, he's getting a lot of play in all sorts of situations. But he wasn't the difference maker for them tonight. Actually, on, which goal was it? Shillington kind of muscled him out of the play.
Yes.
Just totally.
Yes, that might have been the second
neutralized
or
him.
the third goal. Yeah, if you hadn't said Hanifin was -1, I wouldn't have known that he was on the ice for any of the goals tonight because he was completely anonymous. And, when Hanifin was at his best in Calgary, that was sort of, I guess, his textbook game in terms of him being able to blend in. But it wasn't so much blending in as just not having a measurable impact. And when you're trading a first-round pick for a guy, you kind of want to have him as a measurable impact. I mean, watching Vegas tonight, I was thoroughly underwhelmed. And I thought they had a bit of a push in the third period, but aside from that, oh boy, they were rough. And they've had a rough go of things. Now, obviously, they don't have Mark Stone in the lineup. They don't have Tomas Hertl in the lineup. That's sort of been their whole mantra over the last few seasons, is to sort of stash those players, and they'll be better in the playoffs. But to me, we saw when the Flames got the first round pick in the Jonathan Huberdeau Matthew Tkachuk trade, they traded it basically right away to get Nazem Kadri. I don't want them to trade that 2026 first round pick that they got from Vegas. I would be extremely cautious about making any moves involving that pick because it's an unprotected pick. And you don't see many unprotected picks moved, especially 2 years out. And with Vegas, I mean, this is a team that has missed the playoffs before. And I've liked them a lot. And they're a very aggressive team. And they're going to do whatever they can, as long as Bill Foley is still their owner, to make the playoffs and make an impact. But holy moly, that team is not getting any younger. And I did not like them tonight at all.
It wasn't the greatest, but as much as we wanted to see how he played, we also wanted to see what the reception was going to be like. There's been a lot of questions today about what Noah Hanifin's legacy is. There doesn't always need to be a legacy.
No.
Sometimes you are a very good everyday NHLer one of the best players in the world if you are in this league, but sometimes you are just that very good.
Yeah.
And that's what the mark is. So there was a smattering of boos in his first shift, some polite applause, carried himself well.
That's pretty much it.
But at the end of the day, I think it was a little bit milk toast on both ends.
That's a good word. And I would say it's a completely apt word. Yeah. Asking what Hanifin's legacy is as a Flame is sort of like asking what, it's not even a fair comparison because at least he went to the Stanley Cup final, but it's like saying, what is Jordan Leopold's legacy as a Calgary Flame? What is Jay Bouwmeester's legacy as a Calgary Flame? I mean, both those are fine players. Hanifin is a fine player, and obviously Leopold was a part of a very good team, so there is something to that. But at the same time, I can probably count on one hand, maybe two, the number of times that you come out of a game for the last 6 seasons and say, Hanifin dragged them to that win tonight. And it's not an indictment on the player.
To be fair, he did have one of his best offensive outputs this year.
Yes,
there were games where he totally drove.
Totally, 100%. I would say before this season, less so. But, again, it's not, he wasn't like, you're not watching Dougie Hamilton out there. Yeah. And even then, Dougie is maybe not necessarily the greatest example, but, he is a player who I think was perfectly fine. He is now gone and life moves on. The earth spins. And they gave him a nice little reception. And I think that closes the chapter. And I don't know if we'll ever really think about it again.
To be fair, like he did make it to playoffs. 3 seasons in his 6 seasons with Calgary, which is more than we can say for many a player who has come through the Saddle Dome. And a little recap of our word of the day. Milk toast is a good synonym for feeble.
Yes, it is. It's a great word.
It's got a Q in it.
Yes, it does. Milk, it's spelled milquitoast. Yeah.
Milquitoast.
Yeah.
It'd be a good Ricky from Trailer Park Boys.
I think it's a reference to like the early 20th century where that was actually a meal that people would have, where they would put a piece of toast. I don't think they would butter it, but they would put a piece of toast in a bowl of milk and they would eat it. I think it was like during the Great Depression, and that sort of spawned. I think it was like popularized on a comic strip. I don't know why I know. Like I vaguely remember reading this somewhere.
Yeah, we're learning lots today.
Etymology. Folks. It's March.
I mean, I think just milk and toast is still.
It's. I mean, separately, sure. Not like putting the toast in the milk. That's
another weird thing. Since I know y'all really like TJ Ginla.
Yeah.
I talked to his coach about him, just like what are some of the quirks about TJ? He's like he eats a lot of Edo, Japan. Yeah, like the restaurant in the malls.
Yeah.
And he drinks a lot of milk.
There you go. I was ready to get whiplash from that
2%
transition.
guy.
I was like, what does TJ Ginla have to do with milk? But that is.
He's a big fan. Strong bones.
Strong bones.
Good teeth.
Gotta have the calcium. He's a strong player. How many goals does he have now this season? 43?
He is, and Andrew Crystal is right behind him. Gabriel Stutz, man, those guys have got it going.
You're the WHL. I mean, we should just give Cami the floor. I mean, keep going.
Weirdly enough, like going into this week, only 2 teams had 2 40+ goal scorers.
Yeah.
One being Moose Jaw.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone would guess this. Spokane.
I am stunned.
Berkeley Catton and Connor Roulette. Someone give Connor Roulette a contract, goddamn.
Unsigned. Dallas 4th round pick?
Yeah.
2021.
Unsigned. He's looking.
Yeah.
He's open to offers.
Connor Roulette. Hey, put him in red and black.
Yeah.
Red or black.
They could be an angry team to run into in the first round of playoffs there. It's going to be very exciting. But for all the talk about Noah Hanifin, good old Braden Paul facing his old team.
Yes.
He's lifted that cup. He brought it to Estevan.
He has.
The Energy City.
Bruins. Home of the Bruins.
Mm-hmm.
Former home of the Bruins. Still there?
Still there.
Yeah. Well, in any event, Braden Hall, I mean, I think generally speaking, since he was claimed off waivers on, I think, February 4th, he has been very good. And his underlying numbers in Vegas were not terrific. There's a bit of skepticism, but I think he's done everything asked of him. But the one goal tonight against for the Flames, holy moly, that's a terrible.
Yeah, it's like he's been doing so well. Yeah. He's been fitting into that third pairing type of role. And then every now and then there's just that one play. Like he had a tough weekend.
He had a lot of space there. And I think that's Brett Howden bearing down on him. And it's just like, oh, Braden, just rim it around. And it was sort of similar. I think Shillington had a similar play at one point in the game where he just threw it up the middle. And, I love the creativity from the Flames defense. I would say this is maybe it's hard to say this like fairly the most skilled, like just in general, their defensive group has been just in terms of they have guys who are willing to make plays with the puck. I mean, we saw Daniil Miramanov make some outstanding plays with the puck tonight. That is a guy who
He is very comfortable
really
jumping up
like.
in the rush.
Really like Daniil Miramanov. And Paul, not necessarily billed as that type of guy. And, I understand maybe you're inspired by Oliver Shillington. I think they've been playing a lot together. But yeah, that's an instance where just throw it into the corner, throw it up the wall. Yeah. Not his finest.
Yeah, but you know what? I do think every defensive pairing for the Flames did have at least one very good scoring chance. Like they were all sniffing around it. I mean, we do know that the pair that Calgary lost was its most defensively responsible pair in the
100%.
end. But no, they all had a very good outings. And even the scoring chances for Calgary ended up with 31 scoring chances.
We were talking about this during the game too. Like natural stat trick obviously has the counts. 31 feels high. Like I get it. And scoring chances are to an extent subjective. And they can vary by where you're playing. And I get it. Like sometimes these statistics have a knack to sometimes go against the flow of what you're seeing. And 31 still does feel high. And I think they limited their opponents to considerably fewer. Yeah. As of my last update here on Natural Stat Trick, it was 24-14. As of the final, it was 31-20.
Yeah.
Which to me, that
13-5 high danger chances, and that's in favor of Calgary.
To me, the disparity does reflect what I saw. The pure volume, maybe not necessarily, but maybe they were just counting them a little bit more softly tonight. In any event, I thought Calgary was the stronger team for pretty much the entire 60, which of course has not been the case recently. And again, I go back to, I'm not sure if that's the Flames playing particularly well or Vegas playing particularly poorly. I mentioned this during the game, to an extent for the Flames, they have a vested interest in seeing Vegas go at least past the first round, because then they get the second round pick in the Hanifin trade. To me personally, if Vegas keeps winning, they're probably going to face Edmonton in the first round. And I don't love that matchup a ton for Vegas against Vancouver. I kind of like it a little bit more. So seeing Calgary beat Vegas tonight, Vancouver, I mean, they're less tested. Obviously, it'll be their first trip to the playoffs since 2020, second since 2015. They have experience in some respects. I mean, JT Miller made the playoffs with the Rangers way, way long ago. They're without Thatcher Demko for a little bit. Not sure how Demko will be once he gets back. Their defense is still a little bit suspect to me. And of course, Edmonton's is too. And I love Quinn Hughes. I saw Quinn Hughes play live a game against Arizona a couple of months ago, and he was the best player on either team by a large margin. But I am suspect of that team beyond Hughes on the back end. And so there are a couple things where, all things considered equal, Edmonton's underlying numbers are also a lot stronger than Vancouver's are, just generally expected goals, that sort of thing. If I'm Calgary wanting Vegas to go at least past the first round, to me, I would rather see them play Vancouver. But who's to say? I mean, we've seen teams go on crazy runs. Vancouver's been, they're second in the league. So obviously you can't discount that either. So it's hard to say. It's a coin flip either way.
For the first time in my life as a BC born and raised kid, I'm going to agree with Mark Messier. Canucks are a wagon.
Yeah.
Look out.
Saw that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe he was trying to jinx them. That sort of
He probably is.
Yeah.
He can issue another apology to the city.
No love lost there.
None whatsoever. But yep, as you're saying, the conditions on the trade from Hanifin, if Vegas advances to the second round of the 2024 playoffs, they will concede their second round pick in the 2025 draft instead of the third rounder this season.
The ideal outcome is that Vegas and Dallas make it to the conference final and Dallas wins, because then Dallas would transfer Calgary conditional pick in the Tanev trade as well. So that would be having your cake, eating it too, and then seeing who wins the cup final. But yeah, I mean, and then that doesn't even go into the can of worms that's opened up by all the conditions with the Monahan pick going into next year, where the Flames are heavily incentivized to finish in the bottom 10.
We love trade trees.
Keep their own first round pick instead of sending it to Montreal. My one request for Craig Conroy is just maybe spend a little bit less time on the minutia. But other than that, I mean, yeah, no, that's sort of the ideal pathway forward from that standpoint. Of course, they still got to make the good picks, and that's easier said than done.
All right, that's our first look at this Flames win over the Vegas Golden Knights. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got your DoorDash Hungry for More. We've got the road ahead. We've got some actually pretty neat news out of Edmonton, and we'll take your burning questions. So stay with us.
Greta, it's our home away from home for Afterburner. We'll be there for live watch parties throughout the season. Should be your spot regardless. Before, during, and after the game, grab a cocktail, something from the menu, let the games begin, or maybe you get into the game yourself. Over 50 arcade games from vintage to state-of-the-art. Load up some credits on that Greta game card of yours and get at it. Greta Calgary, located at 213 10th Avenue Southwest. Check them out online, gretabar.com.
It's nearly the best time of the year. Playoff hockey is around the corner, and I'll tell you what, the Grey Eagle Resort and Casino is the place to be. Cheer on your favorite teams with us at the Stage Bar. Enjoy the big game on one of those huge screens over the bar with friends, drinks, and delicious food. Let's go. Visit GreyEagleResortandCasino.ca for more information. Now, while I've got your attention, let me tell you about the happy hour at the Grey Eagle Resort and Casino. Let's make the most of the day and spend your afternoons with great drinks and food. Join us at the Stage Bar and Blaze Bar and Grill for our new happy hour every day, 2 till 5. Enjoy food, drinks, all starting at $5. Make the most of your days. Visit GreyEagleResortandCasino.ca for more information. If you're thinking of buying or selling your home in the Calgary area, there's one guy you've got to talk to. That's Derek Newman of the Derek Newman Real Estate Group with CIR Realty. Buying or selling doesn't really matter. Derek does it all. He's a volunteer in the community, active in sports around the city, whether it's golf, curling, huge Flames fan. So talking sports or talking about the real estate market, definitely give him a shout. He's approachable, trustworthy, and hardworking. Also, Derek's got a pretty vast network. He's even got access to some homes often that aren't even on the market yet. And you can ask him about his complimentary home staging consultation as well. Buying or selling, call him or text him right now at 403-619-6661. Derek will make it easy for you. Get Derek and his network to work for you. That's Derek Newman. Email him at dnewman@cirrealty.ca. More post-game reaction right here. We're back on Afterburner.
We do love to see some Steve Smith recognition in the chat.
Yes, former Flames captain.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Late 90s. Ew, I mean,
tough times, people.
number 55. Yeah. Former Stanley Cup winner, obviously, but also the 1986 playoffs. Very helpful to the Flames back then, too.
Yes, the own goal heard around the world.
Yes, kind of a rough one for the folks.
I don't think I've ever felt worse for a person watching a highlight.
No. I mean, that was, yeah, you can't get much worse than that. Steve Smith, the sickest man in Canada at that time. Yikes.
Yeah, we're going to dive into your DoorDash. Hungry for more? They've got restaurants, groceries, pharmacies, whatever you want or need. Open the app, choose what you want, and your items will be left safely outside your door with the contactless delivery setting. And with Double Dash, you can order from several places in the same delivery without the extra fees, so everyone gets what they want. So we can usually take this in a number of ways. I was telling you before the show, sometimes it's like, man, this person was just so great. I need to see more of that, or this was really lacking. We need to see more of that. I am hungry for more of, or a solution for Jacob Peltier, because that fourth line was just not getting the love tonight. They had little to no ice time in the third. We do know that Peltz is coming off a very significant injury, but he has not quite found his footing and shown the spark that made fans love him so much in his first season with Calgary.
Yeah, and even beyond that with the Wranglers over the last couple of seasons, where Peltier, I mean, that top line that the Wranglers were running so often with him, Zary, often Matthew Phillips, Ben Jones was in there as well. It was just so clutch, dynamite, dominating possession. And he was a huge part of that. All three guys on that line really drove it well, but he was just so electric with the Wranglers. And even coming up last year, I think you nailed it on the head. He was very strong. And this year he has looked a little bit lost to my estimation. And it's I don't think it's really a fault on him. He's playing under a new head coach. I think Daryl might have even liked him a little bit more than he let on, just in terms of his deployment. I think Peltier is a guy with a really good motor. He's not the biggest guy, but he's strong in the puck. I mean, all things even, I think in the American League, Peltier, what we saw of him last year was even better than what we've seen from Coronado in the American League. That's how much I liked him in the American League. And so what we have seen from him now, it's tough. And it's almost at the point where the guy who I would love to see him play with is Michael Backlund. And it's such a shame that you can only have 3 forwards on a line, because I think if you get a 4 on a line, him and Coleman and Backlund and Mangiapane would be great together. And it's just the nature of the business. And obviously they got to make a decision coming up on Mangiapane. He could be a guy who I could see them trading this summer, because he's only got 1 year left. And you could maybe retain half of his salary in the summer and send him to greener pastures, or you could look at re-signing him for a lesser cap hit.
Well, actually, I do think I remember last season playing Vegas, they put Backlund and Huberdeau with Pelche, and that led to a goal. And that was where we started to see this kind of brief resurgence for Huberdeau, where he was at a point where before tonight, he had 12 points in his last 12 games against the Golden Knights. And for that shining moment, people thought, all right, Pelche is going to be the guy to kind of help reignite Huberdeau the way that we've seen Zarian Pospisil invigorate Kadri.
Yeah, Jacob Pelche, and my interactions with him over the years, he's such a real bundle of joy, and all of his teammates all really glom around him as a guy who's a rallying force in the room. You know, for whatever reason, in these last couple of weeks, it just hasn't really clicked for him. It is something where no matter what they do with Mangiapane, I would love to see him get a trial run there, and maybe they move things around. It's going to be tough for them to manage because they have so many good forwards, and you know, they don't necessarily have the elite forwards, but they have really good depth. And so finding room for all these guys to contribute, even when a guy like Connor Zary is on the shelf, is tough. But for Jacob Pelche, he's a guy who has a bright future. He's a guy who I think when more guys in this team are traded, there will be a role that opens up for him. As it is right now, I wonder if he's 100%, but it's just tough. And I agree. I want to see more.
Yeah. He ends up with a 4:55 of ice time tonight, -1.
Ouch.
Yeah, not great, but not great at all.
Oof.
But at the same time, there is, I think, a lot of hope that they can find a situation that works for him, because his skill set really lends itself to him playing really anywhere in the lineup. Whereas a Coronado, it's like, yeah, this is probably going to be a guy who needs to be in your upper lines if he's going to hope to have an impact.
Yeah, Jacob Pelche, a guy who he reminds me of, or who reminds me of him, is Vlad Nemesnikov, just being a really good glue guy. A guy who, you know, won't always score. He might go on long droughts, but when he does chip in, he can be a guy who goes on a hot streak. And no matter what, he helps you at both ends of the ice. And he's a good character guy too. And I mean, no matter where he ends up settling in, I do think he has a future with this team. Just a matter of them finding the right fit. And again, if they go even more further in on the sell-off this summer, trading, again, guys like Mangiapane, Kuzmenko will probably eventually be flipped as well. I think it's a matter of time with him. He's got to regain that strength a little bit too. I mean, we saw what that process can be like with a guy like Andrew Mangiapane, who last year was not all right, I don't think. No. And this year he is looking a little bit more like he was. He's not there yet, but it can be a really gradual process. And I was there that preseason game against Seattle where he got injured. That was a brutal hit.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I'm going to give him a lot of time. Obviously, the Flames are not at the point where they're throwing the white towel just yet. The white flag, they're not the white towel, but they are still trying to win games, and they're trying to get back in the win column and throw at the guys who they think give them the best chance to win on any given night. They're not in full development mode yet. But given it a couple weeks, I don't think Pelche will be playing 455 a night.
Not full. Yeah, not quite in that mode yet, but there's also just no need to rush him.
No.
And honestly, before it kind of looked like, all right, Pelche is not going to get a lot of playing time tonight. My hungry for more was going to be Matt Coronado. Because we were both surprised when they said that is his second goal of the season. And it was a great goal. But he hasn't found his footing as immediately as some fans thought he might when he first came in here.
Yeah, I think found his footing is a good way to put it, because I think it applies both literally and figuratively, in that I don't love his skating. And it's been something that's bugged me a little bit all season long, where I just think he is a half step behind the play. And it's something where the Flames have really good skating development coaches, and I'm sure they're going to give him a regimen this summer. It was even apparent.
Oh, Danielle Fujita's gonna get him sorted.
They will get him on a high carb diet. They will get him on the treadmill. They will get him going. It was even something that popped up to me a little bit in the American League, where Coronado's been on an island a little bit this season. The Wranglers are not as strong as they have been.
Mangled by injuries.
Very much so. And when he's been down there, I have found that a lot of his offense has come off of other teams' mistakes. He's not a guy who comes up on the rush and really develops plays and builds plays off the wall. He's a guy who capitalizes off turnovers in a really good spot and then rips the puck past the goaltender. He has an amazing shot, and he put it on display tonight. But it is about getting to those areas that make a goal scorer really pop. And we saw it. There's so much of his game that is similar to Mike Camilleri back when he was a Flame, getting to those really soft areas and just hammering pucks. And he's not quite at the point where he is consistently able to get to those soft areas. And a big part of that, I find, is his skating and his poise. And that is something that can be improved. I think a really good example of that is Oliver Shillington, who, when he even was breaking out in 21-22, having that amazing season, he was weak on his edges. And it was his biggest flaw for other teams to exploit, was to get him sometimes making a little bit too many plays at the blue line. He might lose an edge, fall over, and you might have a 2-on-1 going the other way. This year, I think Shillington, since coming back, has been outstanding on his edges. He's been really steady, which is something that we haven't seen from him. And he is 26 developing that part of his game. I mean, he's not tumbling into the boards. And that's not something that we've seen from him, I don't think, even once this season. So that's something with Coronado where they're going to get him on the right track. He is on the right track. He's developing very well. I think he is night and day from where he was at the start of the season to where he is now. He's just got to keep at it.
We do love a Mike Camilleri compared with him.
Love Mike Camilleri.
Especially like one of my favorite underdog playoff runs of all time.
Yeah, the Habs.
The Habs.
Yeah.
Yarrow Halak and Mike Camilleri, unstoppable. Love to see it.
And a couple years later, it was Rene Bourque doing the exact same thing.
Wasn't Rene Pride of Laklabish.
Rene Bourque having like 8 goals in the playoffs. He had a hat trick that run.
We have a small shrine to Rene Bourque in our house.
That is great.
Yeah.
Number 17.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very similar in a lot of ways to Yegor Sharangovich,
who did get the secondary assist on the Matt Coronado goal tonight. And that was Dryden Hunt with an insane centering pass. That was a great play off the rush. So love to see that. That is my hungry for more. Is there anything you're hungry for more of?
I want to keep. So your hungry for more was something that you want to see more of. My hungry for more is something that I want to keep seeing. And I want to keep seeing Daniil Miramanov playing big minutes because he has been terrific. And I was excited for him when they got him because he's a player who I've seen a bit with Henderson in the American League, them playing against the Wranglers so frequently. He is so much fun to watch. And he was a lot of fun to watch in the American League. This is a guy who was stuck behind a bunch of guys in Vegas, including Braden Pahal. And my buddy Justin pointed this out to me a couple of weeks ago, where I think the reason that Vegas waived Pahal in the first place was because Miramanov was coming back from injury. His big, he blew out his knee, he was coming back. And so they had too many defensemen, so they waived Pahal. Calgary claims him. And then a month later, they trade Miramanov to Calgary anyway. So they end up with both. And I think Calgary's got to be over the moon with that. I mean, Miramanov obviously is at the end of his developmental runway. He's 26, I think, 27.
26.
But he has been so much fun to watch. I mean, he reminds me in a lot of ways of sort of a beefed up version of Jakub Nakladl. Remember that? That's a throwback. But that was a guy who was big and he could really shoot the puck.
You're referencing a lot of Czech and Russian World Cup of hockey players.
There you go.
We're going to take it back to 2016 on that one.
Well, there you go. I mean, Jakub Nakladl. I remember the end of that season, Jyrki Jokipaka, Jakub Nakladl were pairing together. He's another Jyrki Jokipaka played for Finland at the World Cup that same year.
Sure did with Polka, Batman.
Billy Polka.
Yep.
Wow, that's a throwback.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I can keep going like this all day. But with Nakladl and Jokipaka, that was a pairing very similar to what the Flames are doing now, getting all these sort of cast-off defensemen from other teams. But Miramanov, I think, has a lot more staying power than a guy like Nakladl does, where he's a guy who he's playing 20 minutes a night right now. He's averaging 19:45 a night in his first few games with the Flames. And he has been so good. I mean, he took 8 shots the other night against, I forget, it was Carolina or Florida. And tonight, that shot of his in the first period when he was coming down the left side, he just let that one go. I was like, whoa, he had got a lot of mustard on that shot. And to me, I mean, for a team that is going through a retooling, rebuilding phase, whatever you want to call it, having players like that who are entertaining to watch while also being, I think, objectively good under the surface, but maybe not so good as to push your team into contention, maybe being too good than they need to be. That's the bread and butter of any good, entertaining rebuilding team. And that's what Miramanov offers for me personally.
When it was 1-0, I thought, man, if they lose this game, this is textbook losing in a positive way to build towards something. And Miramanov does finish with a 20:53 of ice time tonight. A lot of that is coming from his time on the power play unit, and he's fit in really well there.
Yeah.
I think it's
yeah,
been
100%.
one of the more effective defensemen that we've seen slide into those units.
Yeah, like he can hack it.
Mhm.
Like and it reminds me actually of seeing Juuso Valimaki quarterback the power play in Arizona, since he went there from Calgary, sort of playing a very similar style. He's not quite as mobile, but seeing Miramanov doing very much a similar thing here, where I think he is so strong, he can move well. He has a terrific shot. It's sort of similar. Like I really like what the Flames are doing, prioritizing these guys who are good at getting pucks through traffic. It's been something that I've noticed with Artem Grushnikov too, since he's come over from Dallas or Texas, playing for the Wranglers. He isn't an offensively inclined guy generally, but he's very good at getting low shots along the ice to the net through screens. And it's something that I think Miramanov has done very well as well. And it is something that, I mean, we have seen guys quarterbacking the Flames top power play unit over the years. The name that comes immediately to mind is TJ Brody, who had terrible shots. And I love TJ Brody as a player. I loved him in Calgary, but he was a poor power play quarterback in my estimation for that reason alone. I thought not only was his shot kind of weak, but he was very bad, I thought, at getting it through traffic. And Miramanov does both those things very well. Now, if he can turn into a quarter of what TJ Brody was on the other sides of the game, that'd be excellent for the Flames. But as he is right now, it's money.
I just saw someone point out Miramanov's height again, like 6'4", 6'5".
He's
He
a
was
big
that
guy.
tall in junior. I
Yeah.
remember interviewing him in Bathurst.
Yeah, a Katie
He
Bathurst
was
Titan.
Acadie Bathurst Titan.
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 Titan. Gotta have it. Get him in Titov.
Acadie Bathurst.
Hey, Katie Bathurst. Blanesville, Bois, bro. Yeah, Armada.
Chikurumi Seganea.
Oh,
Fun names out in the queue. But he was so tall on skates. He was too tall for my tripod. And I did all my own camera work then too. So, you know, that thing is cranked up as high as it can go. I'm just hoping that it's pointed in the right direction. And I do like, sometimes you'll just like draw a smiley face on your hand and you'll tell them like, answer to my hand. Because when they look down and answer to you, their eyes look closed. And he was just like that. Rodrigo Abels was on that team too. And he was friggin' huge as well.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, yeah. I mean, you look. Even
you talk about him on the power play, though. I will say my white whale is, or my Roman Empire is the time that Sutter put out 5 defensemen on the power play.
That was Brent Sutter, I believe.
Yeah.
That was, and
Corey Starch was on that.
And one of those guys was a guy who reminds me a lot of Miramanov. And this is another throwback is Anton Babchuk. That's a very similar type of player who was on very similar types of teams. Didn't hack it in North America for long, but he had seasons where he was putting up 18 goals in a year. And that's something where I could see it with Miramanov too. But I mean, this is a guy who in a couple seasons, you know, you're getting guys like Jeremy Poirier and Grushnikov and whoever into the lineup. If you're looking at this guy as a guy who you can maybe flip, that's just another piece of a Hanifin trade, which a lot of people see as being underwhelming. But I think there's potential for it to grow in terms of these different assets down the line. And Miramanov is a guy who, you know, when he came over, you see these pieces in the package. 6'4" or 200 plus. He's a right shot. He has a lot of points in the American League. He's a bit of a late bloomer in that he didn't really have his big KHL season until he was 22, 23. Then he's signed, comes over, germinates, has a really good year in the American League 2 seasons ago. You're like, what's the knock on this guy? And I think to me, the knock on him is, well, he's not Shea Theodore. That's basically what the knock on him in Vegas was. Calgary doesn't really have those roadblocks for him. And I think there is very much potential for him to develop into a guy who is a legitimate NHL impact difference maker.
Yeah, I saw people complaining about his skating before he got here. I'm like, I'm not seeing the issue. In any case, that is our DoorDash Hungry for More. Our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. Download the app and enter code NATION25. That's 25% off up to $10 value and no delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. Now, before we get to the road ahead, we got to give credit where credit's due. This is really cool in Edmonton. So the Ben Stelter Foundation has announced it's bringing a new cancer treatment facility to the city. It's expected to be up and running in 2027. Ground is going to break this year. It's going to focus on a type of treatment called proton therapy, which is extremely effective for pediatrics as well as adults, but it's not available in Canada. So Ben Stelter's dad has been receiving the treatment in Pennsylvania. He's currently battling cancer and they've said it's been effective. And do you remember when Tampa Bay was here, they had this little guy from Calgary named Easton tagging along with the team for the day?
Yes.
Yeah. So Easton Beach, he underwent proton therapy in Florida. and is on the road to recovery now. That was his connection to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, that's a kid from our city who had to go all that way just to get treatment to be able to live his life normally. And thankfully, he's able to do that now. But this is going to be huge for families across Canada. Even if y'all hate the Oilers, we always have love for the Stelters, and that is going to be a shining piece of Ben's legacy.
I love it. And obviously that family has dealt with unimaginable tragedy, not just with Ben, obviously, but his father as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something where it transcends any fandom, obviously, and any allegiances. It's something where if you can donate, you should. The website is live. You can donate however much you want because it goes to stuff like this. And it's just so important.
Massive. So excited to see it. And we're going to get to the road ahead. Village Honda, Northwest Auto Mall, and online at villagehonda.com. New in-stock inventory on the ground, so you can start your automotive adventures at Village Honda, where new vehicle pricing is MSRP. So 2 left on this 4-game homestand. Next up, it's the Montreal Canadiens, 3-4-3 in their last 10, coming off that OT loss to the Bruins tonight. So Calgary edged Montreal 2-1 in their first meeting this season, and that was part of the emergence of Connor Zary. That was his 6th game. And he had a goal and an assist. Yeah,
feels like forever ago now. And Montreal is an interesting team. I mean, I was a bit of a skeptic on Juraj Slafkovsky. He's been terrific of late. And, that 2022 draft class, the top end of it, Slafkovsky, Nemetz, Cooley, all have been really good in the second half of this season. So it's something in Montreal where, you have Slafkovsky. He set up the Suzuki goal tonight. He's been really, really productive of late. It's still a team where I don't necessarily know if I see a first line there. Like, I think Slafkovsky could
lots of pieces.
That guy. Lots of pieces. But Suzuki, I think you love as a number 2 center down the road. It's the same way that I feel about Dylan Larkin, for example, in Detroit, or Bo Horvat before Vancouver had Elias Pettersson. And so Montreal, obviously a team that is in sort of a similar boat to Calgary in terms of jostling for draft positioning after, having been on such a long playoff run just 3 seasons ago. You think about how short and yet how long ago that feels, them going to the Stanley Cup final with Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. But yeah, they're a team who, in the end, I mean, Calgary and Montreal will probably finish within 5-6 points of each other. And if you're on Team Tank, you probably want Montreal to win that game. Ideally for me, I don't, the outcome at this point, teams, it's going to end the way that it ends. And at this point, I think ultimately all you want to see is the individual performances, the players developing. Dustin Wolf having outings like he did tonight. Matt Coronado continuing to score goals. Connor Zary, when he comes back, having games like he has had. Daniil Miramanov, Pahal, Shillington. It just, the list goes on. In terms of the macro sense, I totally understand fans who want to see the team keep winning. I understand it, but again, it's not the sort of thing that you really lose sleep over at this stage.
You just don't want to see blowouts. And Zary was skating this week at the Saddle Dome. He's missed the last 6 now, eligible to return. Currently does count against the Caps. So that's Saturday against the Habs. Then Monday, it's Ovechkin and the Capitals. 6:30 start, a little earlier, so be aware of that. They're in an interesting spot. So 4 points would put them in the second wild card spot in the East. They're kind of taking advantage of the Red Wings implosion. But the Caps had lost 2 in a row coming into tonight. They're currently leading the Kraken 2-1 with about 5 minutes left in the third. But they got demolished by the Oilers, and they're shaking things up a little bit.
Yeah, Washington is crazy. I mean, I have written about the Eastern Conference playoff predicament because I would say none of the teams on the bubble of the Eastern Conference playoff push probably deserve to be in the playoffs this season. It's been just a complete mess. I mean, Detroit, I'm just not even going to get into it. 7 straight losses, just a complete mess there, and some of the worst underlyings in the entire league. I think their expected goals percentage was 30th last I checked. Somehow it's lower than Washington's, which that is a team with a goal differential. Last I checked, they're at minus 32. And if they win tonight, will be 1 point out of a playoff spot. How is that even possible with the team that they have had? Alex Ovechkin has 18 goals. I don't think he scored tonight. Dylan Strome is probably the only player on that team producing at a top line level. I mean, the number of depth players they have rotated through this season, it is just a totally baffling team. And yet there they are. So, Washington has a ton to play for at this point of the season. Calgary, not as much, but it's going to be interesting to see what Washington can do, because then you go down the list. You got Buffalo with 69 points. They won again today. They have won 3 in a row. They've been hot. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen looks like a number one goaltender. I mean, again, I could talk about the Eastern Conference playoff race all day long. Washington, though, yeah, that's a highly, highly motivated team.
Yep. So that's Washington. We'll wrap it up with this. Calgary has a big old 4-day break before hitting the road to take on Zadorov, Lindholm, and the Western Conference leading Vancouver Canucks. They're spitting mad after dropping that game to Colorado last night. Zadorov did have an assist on the game winner. 4-3 Vancouver victory over Calgary in their last meeting in December. That's going to be a really fun game.
Yeah, I think the Zadorov had a Gordie Howe hat trick last night, and I think he might have been one off. I don't remember. I just saw it on Twitter, but he has been a better fit in Vancouver, I would say, than Elias Lindholm has. Lindholm has really struggled, not just in terms of his production, but Vancouver is getting absolutely caved in with Lindholm on the ice in terms of scoring chances, goals for, against. It's just been a complete mess of a fit. And it's going to be something where if Vancouver, again, I talked about them earlier as being a team where if I'm Vegas, I might want to face them. But if Elias Lindholm starts picking it up, then maybe that becomes a little less certain. So, I mean, in some ways, he's kind of like an own rental acquisition at this point. I don't know if they're necessarily going to look at extending him with the way that he has played there because he just hasn't been a fit.
They have not thrown out the receipt.
No. They're looking. They're going to the Walmart customer service counter, I think, and maybe asking for
Walmart
partial.
That's devastating.
I mean, their colors are blue and yellow. Sweden, you gotta, a little bit of a reach there. But in any case, I mean, with Lindholm, it's kind of interesting. Buddy was saying maybe Anaheim would be a team where he would make some sense as a fit in terms of a Leo Carlsson mentor. It does make a lot of sense. Columbus, going back to Johnny Gaudreau, but either way, I mean, you look at what Calgary was reportedly offering him at one part of the season, $9 million. That was maybe his asking price. No, no, I don't like. He'll make a little bit more than half that, I think, on his next deal. Yeah. It's a case where I can maybe see him taking a 1-year deal or taking maybe like a 5x6. It's tough, and he has picked the worst time to have the worst year since he was traded out of Carolina because it's been hard to justify putting him in a top 6 role for the Canucks at this point of the season. Tough.
So that'll be interesting for the fans to watch. A lot of motivation for the Calgary Flames, and that is the road ahead by Village Honda. They've got a huge selection of used vehicles, all makes, all models for all budgets. They have more than 70 units on the site. They have access to over 400 more in the dealer group, so you can make them your one-stop automotive destination in Calgary. Located in the Northwest Auto Mall and online at villagehonda.com. All right, so we're going to take a couple burning questions here. I feel like you're going to be good at these, Mike.
Oh,
yeah. Hit us, Jack.
Love it.
Pop quiz. What have you thought of Matt Coronato's game? Would you see him sent back to the Wranglers or keep in the Flames for now? I would keep him with the Flames for now and see if he can build a little bit of momentum and build some chemistry with the guys he should be playing with on a more regular basis next season.
Well, first of all, thanks for tuning in, Anand. Great to see you in the comments. And I mean, Coronado has been, again, a work in progress. And I think they have a lot of work still left to do. At this point, it's tough because the Wranglers really need help. They have been hard to watch of late. And it is an instance
but their mandate is also to feed the team.
Exactly.
So you can't fault an AHL team
to
too hard for underperforming. It's like, oh no, too many of our players got called up.
Exactly. It's like, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Yeah. So I would say keep him obviously for now. Connor Zary coming back is going to throw a bit of a wrinkle into the equation. And obviously you'd hope Kuzmenko would be back by then too. So what are you going to do? Are you going to put him back down in the American League, help that team? Because it is easier to develop guys when you have a winning culture around your team in the American League too. And, I was saying this to you during the game. Right now with the Wranglers, the only guy who, and I don't mean to forget anybody if I do, but the only guy who I would go there to really study as a prospect is Jeremy Poirier and maybe Artem Grushnikov. But it's barren. Like since I started covering the Wranglers back when they were the Stockton Heat, it's the most outmatched roster they've had. And it's not their fault. It's not the fault of Trent Cole, the head coach. It's not the fault of any of the players there. It's just the nature of the game. So to an extent, I would say, yes, send him back down. But to the other side, I think he's only going to keep developing if he's playing with guys like Nazem Kadri to his fullest extent. So it's a really tough one. It's a great question. And it's one where I go back and forth.
All right, let's see another one here. How is Samuel Honzek spelling? progress been this year. A lot of good players were drafted right after him. So Honzek had another little injury bug at the start of the year. He came back, I think it was late November, early December, got the C right away for the Vancouver Giants, and he's been very effective for them. It may not show up on the score sheet every night, but they've been one of the hottest teams in the second half. For a while there, it looked like they might not even be a lock to make the playoffs. And they were up to being one of the most competitive teams in the BC division. They were knocking off teams like Portland and Prince George. So I would not be sleeping on Sam Honzek anytime soon. I know that the Flames are keen on him. He did a lot of his injury recovery in Calgary to still be around the team and get to know people there. So I think he's been progressing quite well, and he'll be interesting to look at the pro level, but because I don't think he'll be a junior for that much longer.
No,
Yeah.
I would imagine both Honzek and Hunter Brustevitz, who we haven't even talked about him signing with the team today, will probably be with the Wranglers next season. And that's really where I want to see both of them, because they're both 04s. They're eligible to go. They might not, but they are eligible to go. And my expectation is they will be. With Honzek, I mean, you have seen him more than I have. It is a matter of, I think it is really tough to evaluate prospects in years like the one that he's having, where nothing has really gone right, in a sense, where he just keeps getting sort of these setbacks, and it's tough for anybody to get into a rhythm like that. I mean, Jaden Lipinski has been outscoring him to a certain extent, and I think, it's good to have those two sorts of prospects playing together. I think Lipinski's another 04. He's another guy who could potentially go to the Wranglers next season alongside him, and Lord knows the Wranglers need those reinforcements. So it's something where, you see the highlights with Honzek. When he is scoring, he looks like a monster. I mean, He is a huge guy. Yeah, the comparable that has been made at times is sort of a Mark Stone light in terms of what he can do in terms of his 200-foot game. The production hasn't been there, but it's, again, tough for that sort of thing to happen where you have all those injuries falling on you in 1 year, and just you can't get out of that sort of slump. And we saw it with Connor Zary. This is something where Connor Zary's first year of pro was a nightmare. He, I think, had the injury in the preseason that kept him out until November, and he looked nothing like the player who I had seen play for, I think, 8-9 games with the Stockton Heat the year before. He was just totally lost, and it was something where it took a year for him to come back and really establish himself as a top 6 AHL center. Now, the WHL is a lighter competition, but it's not an easy league. And, even for a guy who's as physically gifted as Sam Honzek, when you're even a half step off, it can be really hard to make a consistent impression. So from everything that you've said, it sounds like things are going well in Vancouver, and I'm curious to see how things progress down the stretch.
They might not have home ice advantage in the first round of playoffs, but they'd be a team that I would not be super keen to go up against. Cameron Schmidt, a rookie, is another guy I would really keep an eye on in the years to come. All right, let's do a couple more here, Jack. Two of the new defensemen played tonight and did well. What I noticed was Anderson and Uyghur were turning the puck over in their own end. Are they trying to do too much? I wonder if it's like a little bit of mental and physical exhaustion setting in with them, because I would consider these uncharacteristic mistakes for Anderson and Uyghur, but we have seen a couple stinky turnovers.
Yeah.
Some unfortunate giveaways pop up as of late. So maybe these were just two guys who weren't able to let a really tough weekend go as easily as others were and wipe the slate clean.
I haven't loved them as a pairing together. It's something where I would maybe switch it up and go Shillington Anderson and maybe Uyghur and Miramanov. I think those are pairings that would maybe even complement each other a little bit.
Shillington
better.
and Anderson have played together before.
They have played together before. And I mean, they were together with Stockton years and years ago. They were drafted, let's see, I think 8 spots apart. And, they're players who came up together. So it's something where I would totally look at maybe putting them together. And Uyghur and Miramanov, I mean, Uyghur, I think, is at his best when he's not trying to do too much. And I think this is maybe something that he has maybe been doing recently. Miramanov is at his best when he's doing as much as he can, when he's active, when he's jumping into the rush, when he's doing, everything under the sun. So you maybe put those two together and you could maybe see a version of the Shillington
balance the teeter-totter.
Yeah,
balance the teeter-totter.
A little bit more equitable on the back end. And then you have Pahal playing with whoever, Ohotik or whoever on the third pairing. So I think it is something. There is something to what you've observed, Ken. I think there's something where those two, I just don't know if they complement each other all that well. And so if they switch it up, if they don't, we'll see what happens. But just something that came to my mind even before you asked that question is maybe putting Shillington with Anderson.
And I've also been really impressed with Shillington's defensive play since he's come back. That has been, I think people would have been happy if he was close to what he was before, but I'd say he's better defensively than before his break.
100%. I didn't know if Oliver Shillington would be able to play at an AHL level when he came back at first. And his first game with the Wranglers was a little bit up and down.
He had the boots on. Of course he pulled his groin.
Yeah, dude.
He was doing everything out there.
Yeah. And since he has gotten back to the Flames and gotten back into his rhythm, he's been their best defenseman. And I really don't think that's up for debate. I noted earlier just how steady he looks. And that was never a descriptor I would have used for Shillington, even in his best times. And he has been steady. He reminds me a lot of TJ Brody in terms of how well he skates, how smart he is with the puck. I think that is easily the most underrated part of Shillington as a player is just his hockey IQ. He's a player who the Flames, we heard Craig Conroy talk about wanting to be patient with him, wanting to see where he's at in this process. That's something that I empathize with completely, seeing what he wants to prioritize going forward. But if it's hockey, then the Flames got to lock this guy up, because I don't care what your long-term goals are, no matter what they are. Oliver Shillington, I think, has a spot on this team. If they are rebuilding, if they're retooling, and if they're trying to compete in however long, I think he's a guy who you can put in any situation right now with the way that he's currently playing. If he maintains this level, you can put him anywhere.
But to end a very long tangent, we would like to see Anderson and Uyghur performing it better on their respective pairings, as they're now like Uyghur and Miromanov will settle in together a little more. Yeah.
I think,
Shillington and Anderson still getting their reps together.
That's the other thing is Shillington, Miromanov have both been really strong. Uyghur, Anderson, I don't know so much. So I think Shillington, Miromanov.
No, the pairings are switched.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. But what I mean is, if you put Miromanov with Uyghur, a guy who is playing very well with a guy who maybe isn't.
They were playing together a lot tonight.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I thought once they did that, I think there was a little bit of an uptick.
Oh yeah.
Uyghur and Anderson together has been, So you keep that up. That's something that I like to see.
All right. Got time for, let's do 2 more.
Sure.
Do you think Huska is a good coach for a rebuild? Gerard Gallant is looking for a job.
I'm going to jump right into this one. Huska is a better coach for a rebuild than Gerard Gallant is. And I think a lot of fans in New York City are very happy with Alexis Lafreniere's deployment ever since Gerard Gallant was out of a job in New York. And I think Gerard Gallant was an outstanding coach in Florida. He was an outstanding coach in Vegas because they had these veteran-laden cores that he could just send out there to do their thing and sort of hightail it in the offensive zone, make their way back. Didn't play with a whole lot of structure. And when you had creative players like Jonathan Marchessault and Jonathan Huberdeau in Florida, but as of right now, when you have these young players who are cutting their teeth in the NHL, that wasn't something that you saw as much in Florida or Vegas, where all those players had sort of established themselves by the time that they got to those points in their careers where they were playing under Gerard Gallant. In New York City, when he was coaching the Rangers, Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere, Philip Hedl, Keandre Miller, they were held to the highest of standards, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but it is when you are being held to a high standard where you're not even in the lineup necessarily. It's something where Ryan Huska, I don't really have a strong opinion on him as a head coach. I couldn't tell you. But Gerard Gallant, his track record, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. If
a lot of guys do go to him, though, in the off season as well.
That's true.
So he is a guy who is keen on working with younger players. Noah Dobson, a fellow Islander, is a guy who has really credited Gallant with helping him along when he was in the early stages of his career. But Huska, to his credit, has done everything he can to steer this ship through some stormy waters this season.
I certainly wouldn't be rushing to make a change.
God,
like
no.
I don't think anything has fallen off to the point where you even consider it at this point. And I mean, right now,
if you're getting rid of him for any reason, it would pretty much solely be because you missed playoffs when you ditched most of the core pieces of your team. It would be the only reason would have to be like a lack of experience. And it's like, well, how do you get it? And he's done a great job with these guys.
Going for a guy like Gerard Gallant would be a signal to me that ownership or whoever is calling the shots is wanting to progress things at a rate that I wouldn't personally be comfortable with, where it would be, okay, you've had your year of picking wherever 11th, and now it's time to get this ship back on track. We got 6 more years of Kadri, we got 8 more years of Jonathan Huberdeau, 7 more years of Jonathan Huberdeau. We're going to make the playoffs right now, and we want to do that right now. And to me, that's the wrong message to send. I think those are good players who could help you make the playoffs at some point 2, 3, 4 years down the line. But as of right now, this is a team that needs to be focused on development. And with Connor Zary, they have done a good job. They are actively working at it with Pelche and Coronado. And even then, we've seen Huska take the harder approach with some of these players. Jacob Pelche, we just talked about.
Yeah, he's really been about
450
managing
guy.
that ice time. Yeah.
So, I mean, Gallant is a real hard-nosed coach. And I think that can work in the right situation. I don't think it was the right fit in New York, where there was a team just coming out of a rebuild. And with Calgary, which is a team just going into a retool phase, I think it would be the total wrong fit.
All right, let's make this our last one. Pick a good one, Jack.
Okay.
Could Zary be a first line center? What does Mike think? Oh, cool. I'll sit back on this one. Go.
Hey.
Go.
Hey. All right. I love the Connor Zary pick. I love them trading down twice to get him. And I think he is a heck of a player. It falls into the same category as Brock Nelson, Dylan Larkin, Bo Horvat. There was another guy who I mentioned earlier on in the show, Nick Suzuki, who are guys who I really like as second line centers down the line. And, I'm not even saying Connor Zary couldn't be in a couple of years with the right seasoning, with the right line mates, a guy who gets you point a game. But you look at the teams around the league that have the elite number one centers, guys like Elias Pettersson, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon. Those aren't guys like Connor Zary. And that's not shade on Connor Zary. That's just recognition of what his most likely outcome is as a player. Now, no players are the same. No two players are the same. You look at a guy like Mark Stone, who was drafted in the 5th round of hhis draft year, took years and years to make it into the NHL, was like a 23, 24-year-old rookie when he did make it, and beat Johnny Gaudreau in the Calder race that year. He was second to Aaron Ekblad. People sometimes forget that it was Gaudreau and Stone in the same year. And, he takes a while, and all of a sudden, when he's healthy, he's the best power winger for my money in the league. It's him and Mikko Rantanen. So, guys can come out of the woodwork like that. And we've seen Connor Zary, who has followed a bit of an atypical progression, where in his first year in the American League, hampered by injury, he had a down year, and then he has sort of taken those steps forward. I still don't know if I necessarily see the dynamic element in his game, that one standout attribute, whether it's the shot that Austin Matthews has, the hockey IQ that Elias Pettersson has, the speed of Connor McDavid, where I see the guy who, differentiates himself from the pack of guys who are very good, but not necessarily great. And that's not a bad thing. Every single contending team has a lot of very good players, but the list of great elite number one centers is so small. And there are teams that have guys like Connor Zary as a facsimile number one center. But in terms of the player that the Flames need to get to truly differentiate themselves from the pack, I'm not sure if that player's in their organization just yet. They could get it in the draft this year.
Keep your eyes peeled. That'll do it for us tonight. Flames get a 4-1 win over the Vegas Golden Knights. A quick reminder that TJ Ginla has 46 goals, and the Rockets are playing Everett on Friday and Saturday. Tune on in. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. You did an amazing job.
Oh, thank you. You did a great job. Thank you, Cami.
You're doing the best I can with the tools I have. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a fantastic night. Barn Burner, back on tomorrow.